Gay marriage is back on the agenda today with the Equalities Minister Lynn Featherstone launching a consultation this morning. The government say they want to legislate to allow what they call equal marriage. But although Conservative MPs have been told they'll be allowed a free vote, there is anger amongst some Tory backbenchers, not to mention many in the church. Speaking this morning, Lynn Featherstone explained why the government was seeking to change the law.
It was very clear that there was a big inequality, a great unhappiness with that particular barrier, that civil marriages, the marriages offered by the state, were only available to opposite-sex couples. And we have a law that doesn't discriminate. We believe that same-sex people's love and commitment is exactly the same as people from the opposite sex. So as the government, we feel we are duty-bound to offer the same facilities, if you like, to people regardless of their gender. This is about love and about wanting to be married.
Well, with me now is the Liberal Democrat Home Affairs spokesman Tom Brake and Austen Ivereigh from Catholic Voices. And we're just listening there to the Liberal Democrat Equalities Minister, your colleague Lynn Featherstone. Tom Brake, what exactly is going to be gained in terms of any legal advantage? I mean, there doesn't seem to be any difference in terms of increased rights between gay marriage and civil partnerships.
Well, I think a marriage is different, I think, in quality terms, and I think that's why many people choose to get married, and I think that's why many gay people want to get married. I think there is a difference.
A difference, but there won't be any new rights accrued, will there? The rights that you get with a civil partnership will be the same as if you're, having a gay marriage.
Well, I think they are different, I think, qualitatively, but it's actually about providing an opportunity for same-sex people to get married, and I really don't see what the problem is.
I mean, it's supposed to be a consultation at the moment, but it's not a consultation over whether it's going to happen, because it's clear that the government's made up its mind. This is over how it's going to be implemented, isn't it?
It is. All three party leaders, in fact, are committed to gay marriage. So this is about how to do it, not whether to do it.
But it wasn't in any manifesto, was it? It wasn't in the Liberal Democrat or the Conservative manifestos before the election.
Well, it's a commitment that we have decided to make. I think it's perfectly fair for a government to come forward with proposals which there is demand for. Interestingly, recent polls suggest that over 60% of people think that same-sex relationships are just as valid as heterosexual ones. And if that's the case, why can't same-sex people get married?
So you are arguing there is a sort of groundswell of opinion in favour of this actually happening?
Well, the polls suggest that people think heterosexual and same-sex relationships are of equal value.
I mean, there's been talk that Tory backbenchers, some of them are unhappy about it. I don't have numbers, and I don't think it's been that vocal in terms of the numbers of people who may be unhappy about it. But is there going to be a free vote? Is that categorically going to happen? There seems to be some confusion over it.
Well, I'm not sure whether there's going to be. I suspect that already we hear reports that perhaps some people are going to be, ministers might be given some flexibility in relation to this vote, but it is a very clear commitment from the government, a very clear expression of support from David Cameron that this is something that the government wants to do, and I hope Conservative and certainly Liberal Democrat members will want to support this unanimously. It's also got the support of the Labour Party.
But would you like to see a free vote on this issue?
Well, I think the government have made it very clear that this is something we intend doing, and from a Liberal Democrat perspective, it is something that there is a policy commitment to.
There's something I'm slightly baffled about, which is, and Lynn Featherstone has been at pains to stress, that this is no obligation on churches or religious organisations to hold these ceremonies in a religious setting. Yeah. But is it true that actually some religious groups, I mean, if liberal Jews, for instance, or Quakers would like to hold a gay marriage in their synagogue or church or building, they can't?
That's correct, and of course what we're consulting on is about civil marriage, and anything that the government does would not actually legally allow religious marriage to take place, and that's why I'm a bit confused as to why the Catholic Church, for instance, is as concerned as they appear to be.
Why are you so concerned, or why is the Catholic Church so concerned?
Well, the Catholic Church is concerned because actually people are concerned. This isn't just about the Church. I mean, the polls are showing actually at the moment 70% of people believe that the current definition of marriage should stay the same.
Well, how does that square with the polls?
Well, the poll that he's referring to was asking about the quality of relationships and the quality of love, and I think people do respect homosexual love. But actually, when asked about marriage most people understand marriage to be a conjugal institution, man plus woman with a biological possibility of creating and rearing children, and they want it to stay that way.
Do they? I mean, that's the point, isn't it? Yes, that is maybe what people understand it to be, but why can't that change?
Well, first of all, people don't want it to change because they recognise that it's a unique institution with unique benefits. Not only is this a natural institution which exists in society, it's the building block of civil society. The state exists actually to recognise and protect that marriage institution in the same way that the church recognises it and sanctifies it. Here, what is under the proposal here is not just to allow a group of people to marry, it is to fundamentally alter and rearrange the very architecture of marriage.
Well, except this is civil marriage, isn't it?
Yes, it
hasn't
is.
got anything to do with churches or religious organisations in that sense. We're not being asked to actually preside over these ceremonies.
Absolutely not. But there aren't two marriages in this country. There is something called marriage, and there are two ways into it, the civil and the religious.
Well, Parliament decided nearly 200 years ago what the definition of marriage was. I think it's right that Parliament should take the decision in relation to equal marriage. This is about providing an opportunity for people who love each other to get married. I really can't see what the problem is.
I'm
Yes, Caroline,
desperate
please.
to come in, sorry. It's so frustrating. Desperate. Well, to me, this issue is a fundamental one about equalities. That's what it's about. And that's why it seems to me that it's odd to be worrying so much about whether or not it's 70% in favour or 60% in favour. It's a basic issue of equalities. We wouldn't be having a kind of debate like this if we were talking about, should women have equal pay, should women have the vote. To me, if you place the issue firmly in that context of equalities, it's very clear that the government's doing the right thing. I'm not sure that we need the consultation, frankly. I'd like just to see them get on and do it.
I'm shocked by this. I'm shocked the fact there was no green paper, no white paper. It was in no manifesto. Suddenly we have this consultation paper being launched. This is being thrust upon people. And you say it's about equality. Actually, there is, as Joe was saying earlier, there is no legal rights which is gained by this. And just a minute, equality and equivalence aren't the same thing. If we were to open pensions to the under 65s, that would be to overcome discrimination, but it would also destroy pensions. I'm afraid that's what we're talking about here.
Can I just say what shocks me about this debate is that senior Catholic Church leaders have described the government's proposals as grotesque. I find that shocking. What we're talking about is allowing people who love each other to get married. Why is that grotesque?
And how do you feel about being accused of inflaming homophobia?
Well, I think it's a ridiculous and in itself inflammatory accusation for the Equalities Minister to be saying to the churches they're inflaming homophobia when the churches are expressing the majority view of the deep-seated views of civil society on this issue. And
Let me just interrupt you there. I want to tell everybody it's 12:30. You're watching The Daily Politics, and we want to welcome folks from Scotland who are joining us now. They've been watching First Minister's Questions from Holyrood in Edinburgh on BBC Scotland. Gay marriage was also on the agenda there. And that's what we're talking about here in London as well, about the government's changes here in Westminster for gay marriage. Now, we hope in a few minutes to be joined by, indeed, I've just been told he may be there now, BBC Scotland's political editor Brian Taylor joins us. Brian, great to see you. What are they saying about gay marriage in the land of the brave? We've got a picture of Brian, but clearly they have nothing to say at all to it. Where do we go from here?
Well, we've got a consultation. As was stated earlier, this consultation is about how to implement these rights. And what I think the government will make very clear is this is not about religious marriage, this is about civil marriage. When I got married in a civil marriage, that was a commitment to my wife. We didn't embark on something with the intent, purpose of having children. So to suggest that marriage is simply about procreation, I think is not true, I'm afraid.
I don't suggest that at all.
Let me go back up to Scotland again, because I think we've got sound with Brian Taylor. Now, Brian, good to see you. Thank you for joining us here. We're talking about gay marriage down here. Tell us what the situation of the debate is in Scotland. I'm interested, Brian, because it's often said that although in economic terms Scotland is often a more radical country than England, in social terms, Scotland is often a more conservative country. Where are we?
It's often thought to be that, but if you recall the debate very, very early on the business of Clause 13, really I think on the promotion of homosexuality in schools, it was a very, very huge, very emotive debate, and ultimately the change went ahead and that clause was abandoned. At this point in Scotland there is a consultation being issued. Responses to that closed at the end of last year, and the Scottish Government say that they, and Alexander was being asked about it just a few minutes ago, say they're considering those responses. They got 50,000 responses, very large large indeed. The indication previously had been the Scottish Government would give its verdict in the spring. I think the spring in Scotland may be extended a little bit, perhaps towards May or June. Minister Alex Salmond has said in the past he is in favour of the equality issue going ahead, in favour thereby of gay marriage. Nicola Sturgeon says the same, but he said in response to prompting from Willie Rennie, who's the leader of the Liberal Democrats, who said stand against the serious forces, the church and others, arguing against this change, Mr Salmond said it was entirely right to take account of the consultation, and he urged those who were demanding that he stick to his path, that they shouldn't use inflammatory language. He said it was exactly the wrong thing that the debate required.
Brian, thank you for that. Very interesting to bring us up to date on the state of the debate there at the Scottish Parliament and the Scottish Government. An extended spring in Scotland, Brian is predicting there.
Something to be had.
It's the nicest time of the year in Scotland, so I hope it is extended.
So thank you to our guests. Thank you very much to Tom Brake and Austen Ivereigh.
Let's move on to